Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Access Blockbusters Pod. Welcome back to episode number 77, guys. Thank you so much again for joining us this week as we talk about some really interesting news post-Thunderbolts. I mean, we'll talk about Thunderbolts itself, but also some X-Men news coming out of the success of Thunderbolts. We will definitely discuss that, and a whole range of topics, including Peacemaker Season 2, a report about the MCU's direction and where it's going, and a lot of other fun stuff. Andor, Season 2, Episode 7 through 9, The Last of Us, Season 2, Episode 4, and much more. So stay tuned for that. Guys, if you are listening or watching on YouTube, thank you so much for joining us on the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe and give this video a like if you are enjoying. Leave a comment down below with what you think about any of the topics that we discuss today. And if you want to listen to audio, if you are listening, to the audio only platforms, we are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Overcast. So thank you so much for joining us there. Make sure to leave a rating if you could. That would mean a lot to me. And guys, that's about it. I wanted to keep the intro short and sweet this week. We have a lot to get into. Let's dive into the topics. Alrighty guys, before we get on any further, this segment will contain spoilers for Thunderbolts, kind of. I say kind of because the thing that we're going to talk about here wasn't actually really discussed at all in Thunderbolts, but has now been seemingly confirmed after the fact, so you can take this for what you will. You can count this as a spoiler for Thunderbolts, even though what I'm about to talk about really has no bearing on Thunderbolts at all, which maybe in itself is a spoiler, so take this for what you will. We're going to talk about something that a producer said regarding one of these side characters, not talking about the Thunderbolts themselves, but a side tertiary character in Thunderbolts, and talk about what this could possibly mean. So you've been warned, potential spoilers ahead. So there are a couple other characters in Thunderbolts that didn't get a whole lot of screen time, but certainly had a presence. And we're not even talking about Julia Louis-Dreyfus or any of the Thunderbolts. We're not even talking about Taskmaster. There are a couple characters played by Wendell Pierce, the Congressman, and the character Mel, played by Geraldine Viswanathan. And so there are a couple of characters like that didn't have a ton of screen time, but were on screen for a little bit of the movie. And Geraldine, Mel, the character Mel, played, she was the assistant to Val, and again, not getting too much into the movie if you haven't seen it, but she was Val's assistant, basically. And honestly, there wasn't a whole lot else that came out of that character. She just was what she was. But there was a lot of speculation before the film, because her name was Mel. I think that was revealed at some point before Thunderbolts came out. And people were like, well, maybe she could be Songbird, because the character of Songbird in the Marvel comics, her name is Melissa. And I think she does go by Mel in the comics, Melissa Gold. And people were speculating, okay, is this a character that, would Geraldine Viswanathan suit up to be a superhero herself in Thunderbolts? Well, again, this is the part of the segment that has spoilers for Thunderbolts. She did not, right? But I guess the question still persisted. And now a producer was doing an interview with IMDb. His name is Brian Chapek, producer of Thunderbolts, who I believe has no relation to Bob Chapek, the former CEO of Disney. And that's a whole other side story. And he basically confirmed that she is, in fact, playing a version of Songbird. So this is what he had to say. Quote, "There is a character that fans are trying to figure out. Is she or is she not? I would say, what emblem does she wear that may or may not hint at this character's larger identity?" So, again, I mean, that's basically confirmation of him saying, yes, this character of Geraldine Viswanathan, she is playing a version of Melissa Gold, a version of Songbird. My question is, why is this being revealed now? Unless Mel secretly has this huge role in Doomsday coming up, that or another MCU project. Maybe she does. For all we know, she appears in Vision Quest or Wonder Man, and she, as Songbird, right? I don't know really who Songbird interacts with the most in the comic books, so for all I know, it makes sense. But it seems odd, because I don't know when we will see this character again, and because she did not at all hint at, other than her necklace, there was no hint or reference to her other ego or alter ego as a superhero, or even a future hint towards her becoming a superhero or anything like that it just feels weird. I mean, for him to say there are fans who are kind of wondering who she is, and yeah, that's the character, is like, okay, great. But then what are the implications of that? Honestly, I don't know if there are any. And that's not to say anything bad about Geraldine Viswanathan or anything like that. And not to say that I don't want to see her in the MCU again. I mean, she was barely on screen during Thunderbolts, so I don't know enough about her character and didn't have a good grasp of her character in general. But, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to seeing her again in the MCU. My point is just that Well, I don't quite get the timing of this quote. I mean, he might have just been saying it in an interview. Maybe he was saying something like, oh, yeah, we'll see her again at some point, and she's playing this character, Songbird. But it seems kind of odd because I don't know where and when in the MCU. I mean, maybe she has a cameo in Doomsday. She shows up at the New Avengers facility, Watchtower, whatever it's called, and she has a mini action sequence as Songbird. Honestly, I don't know. I just find this interesting because, to me, it's one thing if she, at the end of the movie, there was a hint of something to where she was something more than just, Val's assistant. But it really didn't look like there was any. And so this is maybe just a fun Easter egg at the end of the day, but it's something that I think, I don't know, is worth thinking about, just in the fact that maybe she shows up again at some point and she is Songbird, because that's basically what Brian Chapek is implying here. So what do you think about his comments that the character of Mel in Thunderbolts is confirmed to be Songbird, in some form or fashion? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys. So I wasn't originally going to do a segment on this because if the headline was simply Charlie Cox doesn't like one of the episodes of Daredevil Born Again, I mean, sure, a little bit of transparency from an actor. They usually don't talk about the things they don't like for good reason. I think they want to support the people who made them, and usually if they don't like the movies that they're in or whatnot, they still probably had a good time, they had a good experience, and they love the directors and writers and all that kind of stuff. So usually you don't hear actors talking about the fact that they don't like one of the episodes of TV that they were in or the movie that they were in. That's totally fine. It's not segment, breaking news, or it's not anything like that. But then, as I was reading these quotes from Charlie Cox, he actually says something that is so, I just want to talk about it because it's so amazing to hear him say this, and I think I just love the way that he's framing this. So, the headline, right? The headline that's going around. Charlie Cox doesn't like one of the episodes of Daredevil Born Again. Spoiler alert, I don't either. It's perhaps my least favorite episode of Daredevil. It is my least favorite episode of Daredevil Born Again. It's probably one of my, I'm not going to say the least favorite episodes of Marvel television ever, but it's certainly, it's in the conversations with the Lamentis episode in Loki Season 1, for example, for me personally, and the finale of Loki Season 1, which I really don't like. I don't dislike this episode. He's talking about the bank heist episode 5, the one with Mr. Khan. And he talks about why. But then, and again, I want to make this clear, this is not the point of this segment, actually. It's more so to talk about what he says afterwards, which I love. I love this, and it's in line with what I've been saying for so many years now, and I love this. So let's read these comments here, and then we'll go through what he has to say about them. So he's talking about the bank heist episode, and he says, quote, "I don't know if this is of interest, but I will say this: amongst all of these, talking about the episodes, there was one episode we didn't change at all. It's the episode in the bank with interest in parentheses, and that was part of the original shoot. We shot that before the strike. That was part of the original, and just for my money, I wasn't into it. I didn't like it. It was my least favorite of the episodes, and I kind of pushed back against it as much as I felt was possible. I said, I don't believe in a bank heist in 2025. That feels like a 1970s game. Too much technology these days for that to work. And also, I didn't think the actual device used for the theft was sophisticated enough. I really pushed back on the episode, and yet I hear from so many people that they love that episode." Okay, here's where the pivot comes. So, because again, the first part of it I agree with, but let's hear the pivot. He continues, quote, "So it just goes to show you just don't know. It's so subjective. Everyone's taste is different. And I've heard that the episode is one of the highest rated. Internally, when they do their ratings, it's one of the highest rated Disney Plus shows, I think he meant episodes, that they've had. Not to say anything about our previous runners," and he's just talking about the previous writers, "who were tremendous writers and didn't, but they were hired to do a specific job. And it was then decided that the direction was not the right direction. So it made sense, therefore, to kind of hire someone who was more closely related to the Marvel universe, particularly in the Marvel Netflix days, when the serialized element of it was familiar to them." Okay, so again, top of this segment, top of this quote. He doesn't like the bank heist episode. Guess what? I don't either. I think it's ridiculous. I think that you can go back and listen to me talk about it in a full spoiler discussion. I think the Irish bank robbers are just so cringy, honestly. And I don't know. I mean, I like parts of it. I like Mr. Khan in it in general. I like the fact that he's using his powers to break into the bank vault and whatnot. But you can just tell it's different. I hate it. I said this at the time. I hated the end of the episode where, not the part where he says, I want to go meet Kamala Khan someday. That part I hope does happen on Marvel television. That's great. But the part where he, the diamond is left in that little candy jar with Mr. Khan, and it's almost like, hey, wink and a nod, and then, that's all, folks. It's like, that's the end of the episode. I hated that. But people seem to like the episode. people seem to really like the episode, and Charlie Cox is saying internally it did really, really well. And what he's saying here is not, oh, you're all wrong, I think the episode is bad and I don't like it, and if you say you like it, you're wrong. Listen to this. So it just goes, I'm reading the quote again. Quote, so it just goes to show you just don't know. It's so subjective. Everyone's taste is different. And this is what I've been saying for so long. This is why we have these conversations, right? Because if I just go out there and say something about a particular episode or a particular movie and say, I don't like it, and then I go in the comments and people, again, comment, and I love hearing your guys' comments. You guys comment, I really liked it, and you didn't like it. That's great. You say, I like this episode, and you guys say, I didn't like the episode. That's great. If I went out there and pushed my own personal opinion, and this is coming from Charlie Cox, the person who produced the show, who was starring in the show, who had some say in the show, and he's like, look, I didn't like it. I pushed back on the episode. Lo and behold, it's one of the highest rated episodes we've had. That doesn't, again, it's not a one-to-one in terms of general quality, right? It doesn't, maybe it was at the time when the peak of the show was happening. I don't know. There were so many different things that could have contributed to that. But I think the sentiment here is what I really wanted to talk about, is just the fact that, look, we don't know. All we can do is talk about our own opinions, back it up with what it means to us, why we think certain things, that it doesn't negate criticism, it doesn't negate film criticism and film discussion, not at all. But it also leaves the door open for subjectivity, it leaves the door open for conversation, it leaves the door open to different people having different experiences with the same piece of art. So I wanted to talk about this because I love what Charlie Cox has to say about this. He's very honest. He's like, I don't like the episode. And he's also like, but other people do. And he celebrates that. And I think that that is so great to hear from Charlie Cox. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. You guys might think differently. And I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, in an ideal world, I'm going to be honest with you guys, in an ideal world, this segment would have come out with the last episode of the Access Blockbusters pod. Unfortunately, we don't live in an ideal world. As soon as, and this has happened before, unfortunately, but as soon as I hit upload on the entire podcast, I went online, just checking out the news, and saw that there was something else that had just snuck in under the wire. So we're going to be talking about it. It's a little bit late, but I still wanted to talk about it because it is obviously very, very interesting. So we talked actually, and I'm glad we did, because a couple weeks ago, this had kind of come out very sneakily that Ryan Reynolds had done an interview, I think with Time Magazine, that he was writing a new Deadpool project. Lo and behold, we got reports. Hollywood Reporter was the one who scooped this, or who got the exclusive, that Ryan Reynolds is exploring the idea of a Deadpool X-Men team-up movie. This is very interesting because of Deadpool and Wolverine, also because of the state of the MCU, and just where the character will be going in general, because Ryan Reynolds talked about the fact that he wants the character to be more of a supporting cast member in these kinds of films rather than the lead. So we'll see what this kind of movie looks like. But I'm going to read a couple quotes here from the Hollywood Reporter article, and then we'll go from there. So this is what it says. Quote, Reynolds is exploring ideas for a Deadpool movie that would feature X-Men characters, as well as continuing to script the Paramount comedy Boy Band after making writing a priority for much of this year before tackling other obligations, sources tell the Hollywood Reporter. The multi-hyphenate is working on various treatments for an ensemble film featuring 3 or 4 X-Men characters. Deadpool would, of course, appear, but perhaps only as a supporting player. Reynolds is said to believe that keeping his F-bomb wielding anti-hero more on the sidelines could allow for the X-Men characters to be used in unexpected ways. Reynolds has been open about every Deadpool movie needing a strong reason to exist, and it's possible that this could provide the avenue he needs. The potential film, this is also very interesting because I don't think we talked about this explicitly, but this is, I guess, another confirmation about the upcoming X-Men film in the MCU. I think we did talk about this actually a little bit, but anyways, the potential film is separate from a potential X-Men film that Hunger Games writer Michael Leslie is penning for Marvel Studios, and it goes on to talk about other things that Reynolds has been doing. So, what is this movie? First of all, this movie is not coming out before Secret Wars, obviously. Right? Ryan Reynolds has other obligations, including that movie Boy Band, which he's doing with Sean Levy and Hugh Jackman, I believe. So this movie would be coming out in many years, probably 3 or 4 years at the minimum is when this Deadpool team-up movie would come out, which means unless the cast of X-Men characters is going to use the same cast of the X-Men it's going to appear in Secret Wars, so Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart, and goodness knows that Ian McKellen, he's going to be 90 years old by the time that Ryan Reynolds, whatever this X-Men Deadpool team-up movie is going to come out. I doubt it, right? So what this means to me is that this is going to be a team-up movie between Deadpool and the new cast of X-Men. Or perhaps not even the new cast of whatever that X-Men movie is going to be that Michael Leslie is writing, but newer characters, recast characters that are probably not going to be in that X-Men movie, to be quite honest with you. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if this turns into that kind of X-Force movie that was talked about after Deadpool 2 came out. I think that would be a very fun kind of movie where Deadpool is the coach almost of an X-Force kind of team, and then you kind of go from there and see where the character fits in. So what this to me, right, this doesn't confirm or deny at all that Deadpool is going to not appear in Avengers Doomsday or Secret Wars. He still can. But I like, again, the intentionality that Ryan Reynolds has with all of his projects with Deadpool. I think that is, it makes sense that, you need this character to be very specific and to appear in very specific scenarios. And I think that, for the fourth film, or whatever he's going to call it, right? If it's not going to be a fourth film explicitly, it could just be X-Force, and Deadpool is one of the main supporting characters in it. I think that would be really fun. But I think that this is a fun way to go because Deadpool and Wolverine, like it's fine to continue making Deadpool comedy solo films for a while, and even Deadpool and Wolverine was more of a team up film than anything else. Although Deadpool was obviously the main character, and I think that doing this is smart. I think it's going to freshen up the character. It's going to allow him to really be that character that that endeared us to him in the first place, and really be a side character, kind of a smart aleck kind of supporting role. And I think that this is going to work very well. So I'm presuming from this news that this is going to be a Ryan Reynolds team up with a few cast members of whoever is going to be part of this new X-Men franchise moving forward. I don't think it's going to be any of Hugh Jackman, unfortunately. Maybe Hugh Jackman, but I doubt it. I think it's going to be a brand new cast of whoever, maybe a new, I don't know, a new Iceman and maybe a new Colossus and a new Kitty Pryde and a new Jubilee, and they're going to team up with I don't know, I'm just making up a random cast of characters from the X-Men library that's going to team up with Deadpool to do something fun in this post-Secret Wars MCU. And I think that that's exciting. I really, really do. So guys, what do you think of the news that Ryan Reynolds is currently developing and writing an X-Men Deadpool team-up movie? I think that that's very interesting. Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, hopefully you have all had a chance to see Thunderbolts by now. If you haven't checked out my non-spoiler or spoiler review, I loved Thunderbolts. I thought it was fantastic, no pun intended, for the Fantastic Four First Steps, which is going to be the next MCU film. This segment is not necessarily going to be spoiler-filled, so if you haven't seen Thunderbolts, you can feel free to stick around. I'm not really going to talk about anything in super high detail here for Thunderbolts. Maybe I will at the very end, but I wanted to talk about here why I think Thunderbolts is so encouraging and why I think it's a big step forward for the MCU. We're going to talk about later in the podcast a report that came out that talks about how Kevin Feige is rethinking the future of the MCU and the way that he's approaching it. And I think Thunderbolts is really an encouraging first step towards that. So I think that it's all good here. And I wanted to talk about why. 3 reasons why I think Thunderbolts is such an encouraging project for the MCU. And they're kind of broad reasons, but I think that they're worth talking about here. So number 1, and I've said this before, the MCU is built on its characters. The MCU does not exist without its characters. And I know, no duh, right? No movie exists without their characters. But the MCU is built like a giant TV show. And I've always said this. Movies can get away with flimsy characters if the story is the most, the strongest part. I think for movies, storytelling is the most important part of a film. I think that if you're going to watch a movie for 2 hours, if the characters don't work, that's fine. Stick with the story, right? Have a good narrative. But TV, you're investing hours and hours and hours of your time, and you need to spend it with these characters. They need to be worth it. And the MCU functions that way. And I think recently what we've gotten away from is just introduce new character, introduce new character, introduce new character. These characters have to recur, right? These characters have to continue to be the focus of these projects so that we're excited to see them again. I think Thunderbolts really nailed the characters. Yelena, Red Guardian, U.S. Agent, Ghost, Taskmaster, Bucky, I think, and Val and Bob, and all these characters are rich. And sure, some of them are not as rich as others, but really what I'm talking about here is the fact that the movie focused on the characters and really made them the central driving force of the film. Speaking of characters, number 2, there is interconnectivity, once again, with this film into the wider MCU without sacrificing the story. I mean, let's be honest, right? Interconnectivity inherently, because a lot of these characters, all of these characters, were taken from other side franchises and side projects. Yelena and Red Guardian and Taskmaster were taken from Black Widow. U.S. Agent was taken from the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Ghost was taken from Ant-Man and the Wasp. And Bucky obviously was taken, he's from all over the MCU, right? Val has been in the MCU for a little while, and we're introducing some new characters like Bob and the character played by Geraldine Viswanathan, I think. That's how you pronounce her last name. Anyways, what this shows is that there is still interconnectivity, right? But it's not like this film is a cameo fest or just putting these characters in a room together for the sake of it and saying, hey, wouldn't it be cool if Bucky and Yelena talked? That'd be really cool. Because there is a world in which that is the entire movie. Oh, isn't it fun that Red Guardian is talking to another super soldier like Bucky and also U.S. Agent is there? Isn't it fun if? Isn't it fun if? Isn't it fun if? Right? There is a world in which that happens. This film is very connected to the MCU. There's a lot of stuff going on in here that is very connected to the MCU. But the story comes first. The characters come first, and then the characters the story is in service of those characters. And that's really encouraging because that is what the MCU did. It's, yes, some of the pairings that have come before in the MCU don't always feel like on the surface level the exact best fit. Thor and Hulk, when I first heard about that for Thor Ragnarok, I was like, what is going on? It worked beautifully because those characters were put in the right places at the right times to serve the story. The story serves them. And it's not just like, hey, wouldn't it be fun if, even though that is really what the Thor and Hulk fight is in Ragnarok, but it serves the story, right? Same with Spider-Man and Iron Man. It's not just, hey, isn't it cool that Spider-Man and Iron Man are teaming up together? It really serves the purpose of Tony mentoring this kid, Peter Parker, and that continues on throughout the rest of the rest of the MCU as we approached Endgame, right? Tony and Peter. It was a big deal in Infinity War and Endgame as well. Not gonna lie, I like Captain America: Brave New World enough. I do think the Red Hulk part of it was really one of those wouldn't it be cool if kind of moments. And it's cool. It is cool. I mean, if I watch those scenes in isolation, it's cool. But it didn't really feel like it was an integral part of, why is Sam Wilson a part of this? What's Sam Wilson's journey and all of this kind of stuff? It just didn't feel like that was the case. And I think Thunderbolts did a really good job of balancing all of those things. And number 3, because all of those things work, the setup for the future of the MCU is super bright. I'm not going to spoil it here. We're not going to talk about the post-credit scenes. But for those of you who have seen the 2 post-credit scenes, you'll know the way in which they play out is incredibly exciting for the MCU moving forward because we care about these characters now. We care about what happened to them in the film. That the post-credit scene, which I don't think this is a spoiler to say that they have, based on the implications of what happens in Thunderbolts, move the story forward in the MCU and get you excited about what happens next. I think that is a huge win. Remember those days? Remember when we watched Doctor Strange and Thor showed up at the end? We were all so excited for that. Remember in Black Panther when we saw Bucky in the post-credit scene and we were like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? Remember at the end of Civil War, even when we saw Black Panther again? It was like those kinds of moments that were built on the characters, built on the stories, but weren't just Charlize Theron showing up in the middle of the street and being like, hey, I'm here now. Or wasn't, I don't know, what's another example? Harry Styles just showing up and be like, hey, I'm here now, right? Or Brett Goldstein, I almost said Roy Kent. Brett Goldstein showing up as Hercules and being like, hey, I'm here now. These post-credit scenes that are in Thunderbolts really understand what was important to the movie, what made the movies work, and set up the future of the MCU in a really exciting way. I'm so excited for what comes next based on those credit scenes, and I hope you guys are as well. So this is a formula, and I say formula. Formula, has gotten a bad rap, especially when it comes to the MCU of like, oh, it's the MCU formula. I don't think formula is a bad thing to say. It's sort of the MCU's way of working, right? And I think that it worked so well. They got away from it a little bit. I think Shang-Chi was another perfect example of how this could work. Great movie, great characters, great story. Post-credit scene, Bruce Banner and Carol Danvers talking to Shang-Chi and Wong. That's awesome, right? We got so excited for that. We haven't seen Shang-Chi. We're not going to see Shang-Chi for between 5 years, right? Between Shang-Chi 1 and Avengers Doomsday. It's really sad. It sucks. But I hope that the MCU is getting back to this. We're going to talk more about this in a later segment where we talk about a report that talks about Kevin Feige and his plan for the MCU in the future. But I'm just really encouraged by all this. So, guys, what do you think about Thunderbolts being a big step forward in the MCU? Do you guys agree with me or do you guys disagree with me? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys. Well, it felt like this little Star Wars mini-series, anthology, whatever you want to call it, snuck up on us because we are here to talk about Star Wars Tales of the Underworld, which frankly, about a month ago, I had no idea was even coming out until the first little trailer appeared and debuted. And now we are here to talk about this little tradition that we have going on here. Who knows what they're going to do next? Maybe they'll do Tales of the Jedi Part 2. If you guys remember, I think it was 2022, May the 4th, they decided to release 6 episodes of little Star Wars snippets, and they have 3 episodes each of focusing on a different character. So it was Ahsoka, it was Count Dooku, and then I think for the Sith, Tales of the Sith or the Empire, Tales of the Empire, I think it was Barriss Offee, and I can't quite remember who the other one was for Tales of the Empire. I'm trying to remember. I can't remember. But was it Tarkin? No, it wasn't Tarkin. Anyways, all of that aside, we have now Tales of the Underworld, and it's going to be focusing on Cad Bane and Asajj Ventress, 2 of Dave Filoni's favorite characters, I have to say. I mean, it really feels like he pays extra special attention to characters like these. And, Ahsoka kind of started out as a character like this, a side character, who obviously had a very prominent role. But you remember Asajj Ventress showed up in season 1. In fact, in the Clone Wars movie, she showed up. So Asajj Ventress has been here since the very beginning of Clone Wars. And then also Cad Bane showing up very prominently starting in season 2, Rise of the Bounty Hunter, something I was very, very excited about for Star Wars The Clone Wars. So there was that. And I was very, very excited to see him again in Book of Boba Fett, and his appearance was a little bit lackluster, but still it was good to see him in general. And so now we're here to talk about these 6 episodes. It's going to be a spoiler discussion. To be quite honest with you guys, it's going to be pretty quick. There's not a whole lot to spoil. I put spoiler discussion up here because sure, we'll talk about some details. In general, though, there's just really not a whole lot to discuss. And I'm just going to give my general quick thoughts, and then we'll be out of here for this segment. So you have been warned if you haven't seen it, although even if you haven't seen it, I still think, you'll be fine if you know spoilers. But anyways, here we go. So let's start out here with the Asajj Ventress arc. And, it's interesting, right? Because I love a lot of the things that Dave Filoni had done with the side characters in the Clone Wars, right? I think that he did so much for Maul. Even having Maul's brother Savage Opress, right? It was great. The Night Sisters, even Dooku got a lot of extra. General Grievous got so much to do in Star Wars The Clone Wars. I even think Padme and Anakin's relationship, it got expanded. A lot of those things were great. Asajj Ventress, though, was always one of those characters that I think, he really was intent on expanding her out and giving her a backstory. And it just never quite worked for me as well. I don't know why it never clicked. And I will admit that, of course, when she made her turn away from Dooku, that became profoundly more interesting than when she was just the assassin in the early seasons. But even still, I was never fully invested in her character. I know a lot of people were. I know a lot of people really liked her. And also she appeared again after the Clone Wars ended in season 6, and then, before it returned in season 7. I think she was in a canonical book called Dark Disciple, which is what this episode is really alluding to here. With Quinlan Vos, because she had a lot of adventures with Quinlan Vos. And so, that's what I thought we were going to be focusing on. And honestly, what surprised me the most was that this is just Asajj Ventress hanging out with a random Jedi kid. And honestly, while I didn't hate it, I wasn't sitting there going like, oh my gosh, just get me out of this, this arc. I didn't love it because I just don't know why we're having Asajj. I get it. You want to show that she has a little bit of a change of heart and she's a little bit of a different character. You're also calling this Tales of the Underworld. There's nothing really underworld about it. It's more just like Asajj Ventress on the run with this Jedi kid. And Jedi kid, look, he's fine. He's fine and all. But I really would have much rather have seen her adventures with Quinlan Vos, or I would have much rather have seen her adventures as an assassin, or I don't know, something, right? Because for Tales of the Jedi, we saw Count Dooku, before he was a Sith, right? And I think that would have been really cool to see her, before, because we also see Cad Bane for Cad Bane's episodes. This was an origin story of sorts. And so I would have much rather have seen anything else. I think it's fine. I think it's somewhat interesting to see her change of heart and change of character. But honestly, other than that, nothing much else to say. I think it's just fine. The Cad Bane arc is more interesting. Although I will say that, it feels, again, just like, oh, we have some spare time. Let's just flesh out this backstory. Again, interesting. And the ending is decently sad with Cad Bane killing his friend in front of his, the friend's son. That is pretty sad, actually. But other than that, I think it's the first episode especially is a little bit slow because we're seeing them as little kids, and then we kind of pick up from there. I do think that there is a lot more potential with the character of Cad Bane, and I think they got to explore that a little bit more than what they did with Asajj Ventress. So I think I liked it a little bit more. But honestly, I don't know. It's hard for me because on the one hand, right, we're just gonna go bigger picture now with these little anthology series. I like them. Especially. I love just seeing characters that I miss, like Ahsoka in the Clone Wars era, and seeing Count Dooku. That was really cool. And so I think that especially Tales of the Jedi was really interesting to me. The fact that we're we're doing this every year. I mean, it's great and all, but I'm not quite sure what we're gonna do with them from now on, because it's fine and all every May the 4th to see these, and I mean, for the audience members, it's just about an hour's worth of content. It's fun. It's fine, but. Other than that, I just don't know if it's anything memorable, and I wonder how long they're going to keep doing this, and I wonder, what the upshot is. So it's more of a philosophical question than anything else, but still, it's just something that I was thinking about. So yeah, I mean, I again, another May the 4th, another Tales of the blank, and it went by, and I wasn't particularly blown away by any of these episodes, but I didn't mind them. So I feel like that's pretty much the sentiment here for these kinds of anthology series. But guys, what did you think about Tales of the Underworld? Were you a little bit more impressed than I was, perhaps? Or were you about the same as me? Or were you more disappointed? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys, let's talk about the latest episode of Season 2 of The Last of Us. Season 2, episode number 4. This is going to be a full spoiler discussion for the 4th episode of Season 2 of The Last of Us. If you haven't seen it, no worries. Just make sure to keep this video on watch later, save it for later, and come back once you have, or skip ahead in the podcast if you're listening to the whole podcast, because we will be discussing the full episode in spoilery detail. So without further ado, let's get into it. Again, I did my immediate reaction, so apologies if you've already seen that, but I'm going to rehash a couple things here just because I think, just in case you haven't seen it, or if you want some more context. Basically, what I said in there is that the show, right? The show has been just amazing thus far. The first season and the first couple episodes of the second season, because it's been all about the drama. It's been all about the characters. It's been all about just an amazing story and a lot of tension and dynamics and things like that going on. And so, really though, the show made the big switch when it killed Joel in episode 2, right? Because by doing that, and again, I think it was a really bold character choice. I think that it was something that, really shifted the dynamics of the show in a big way. And it was obviously sad to see Joel go, but it was something where I was like, okay, let's see where we're going to go from here. Let's see how this is going to unfold. Because really, again, you lose a character as big as Joel to Season 2 of The Last of Us. How are you going to respond? And I haven't played the games. I don't know what happens specifically in the games, but I know that, generally speaking, Ellie is headed on a parallel path to Abby, where she, is now seeking revenge in a very similar way that Abby was seeking revenge at the beginning of the season. And that's basically all I know. And so heading into episode 4, because episode 3 really delved into the grief that Ellie was feeling and then the resolve for revenge that she felt, and it ended with her and Dina going out and heading out to Seattle, right? And we got a little bit of a hint of this group of prophet people who are now called the Scars, I think, and then the WLF in Seattle. And so we got a hint of that. We didn't get any Abby in episode 3. And in episode 4, we don't get any Abby at all. So we'll see where that goes, because I was really expecting, okay, let's kind of get this conflict up and running. No, we don't see any Abby, which is very interesting. So we had an episode 4. And again, I was not expecting the whole I was not expecting a big fight between Abby and Ellie or anything like that. It was a little interesting to me in this episode that they decided to take it this slow. Because again, I've said this before, filler to me is when, I use the Mandalorian episode all the time, but it's when he lands, I think this was in Book of Boba Fett actually, where he lands on Naboo and he's like, hey, I need something. And Amy Sedaris' character is like, you need something? Go do something else. That's filler to me. Or Mando is heading somewhere, oops, crash lands on frog egg laying animal planet, I don't even know what that thing was, and has a diversion with ice spiders and then has to go off somewhere. That's to me, that's annoying, because again, it's like you're heading directly towards something, and it's not just that things go wrong, it's just that, it feels like the story is being diverted. That's not what this episode was. This episode was slower, and I think that they really decided to stretch it out, because by the time that the episode ends, I was like, okay, so what I know now is obviously Ellie and Dina are developing their relationship. Dina is pregnant. And there was a big action sequence in terms of the infected, and also we see a little bit more with the WLF and the Scars, and that's it. Like 50 minutes, and that was basically all that we got from this episode. And we'll dive into it a little bit more, but I was a little bit curious as to why they decided to really halt the momentum, in my opinion, in this episode. I didn't hate the episode. I just was really surprised that this was sort of the way that we were going, especially now that I feel like you have to start building up momentum again after you cut all the momentum purposefully right at the end of episode 2. But now that I feel like you have to find a way to rebuild it. So let's get into episode 4. Not as much to talk about, like I said, but we will dive into it as well. So we start out with a flashback. Jeffrey Wright, who plays this character named Isaac. We're in 2018, and he's joining the WLF. So we get introduced to Jeffrey Wright, and it's interesting later because he's playing a very it's hard to call any characters villains, but what he's doing to that Scar, I guess they call them scars, is really traumatic. It's really brutal, and you're always so used to Jeffrey Wright playing good guys, but in this episode, he definitely does not play a good guy. So we have Ellie and Dina just hanging out in Seattle, and they're hanging out at a music store, and at this point in the episode, because the episode is starting out here, and we're in the first 15 or so minutes, and I was like, okay, we're at about the halfway point. I believe season 2 only has 7 episodes, so let's kind of see where we're going there. I want to see some forward momentum, because right now it's really just about Ellie wanting to go after Abby. Spoiler alert, that's basically where we are at the end of episode 4, is Ellie wanting to go after Abby. And I think that, again, that's what I mean when I say, at the beginning of the episode, I had this understanding of the characters, and at the end of the episode, I had a very similar understanding of the characters, other than, obviously Dina and Ellie's relationship changes there. And to that regard, at first when Ellie starts singing the cover of Take On Me, I was a little taken aback. I was thinking, what is the point of this? I thought this was sort of in line with that, hey, this is kind of fillerish, what's going on? And as that scene unfolded, I have to say, Bella Ramsey singing the saddest and most tender cover of Take On Me that I've seen. It was actually beautiful, and it brought a lot of emotions to me, to mind. And I think that was honestly a beautiful scene. I don't know what it did. I guess what it did was really, help cement the relationship between Dina and Ellie, and also remind us of Joel. And I think that was good. So that's a character moment that I have no problem with at the end of the day. I think the whole episode being filled with those kinds of moments is interesting. But again, I have no problem with that being in there. I thought it was a beautiful scene. I love the line when she, when Ellie says, "I learned it from Joel," and then Dina, who had just been crying, because I was about to cry. It was crazy. Beautiful scene. Says, "He taught you well," and that was beautiful. Then we get to the interrogation scene with Isaac and the Scar, and yikes, we're not going to go into that in graphic detail, because that scene was incredibly graphic, and like I said, I'm so used to Jeffrey Wright playing good guys, and that was, oh my goodness, that was crazy. So yeah, there's some kind of war going on between WLF and this group called the Scars, and Abby is nowhere to be seen. Where is Abby? I have no idea. I really don't. And again, if you're going to paint this whole season, the rest of the season, as being sort of Ellie versus Abby, I don't know how this is going to play out based on the games. I don't. But I'm just like, where's Abby? We haven't seen her in basically 2 entire episodes after she killed Joel. I think that it's kind of important, right? That we at least see her. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Anyways. So then, so far nothing is really happening except for Ellie and Dina trying to get into the WLF facility. And then there's this, again, there's a really cool action sequence because the infected show up. And I do think it's, they shoot it really well. It's always really great when they do this, because they're able to find new scenarios to really make it terrifying for the infected again. Like when they're in that train, it's always amazing how they're able to take these claustrophobic spaces and make them so terrifying with the infected just running around and trying to get them. And so Ellie gets bit, and Dina didn't know that Ellie was immune, and she gets bit, and then I thought actually Dina got bit for a second, and I thought that was going to be the dilemma in this episode, where she would have to kill Dina, but Ellie was the one who got bit. And then Dina reveals that she's pregnant. And okay, right? So the signs were, I guess, from what I'm reading online, that, she was throwing up and things like that, and Dina says as much. I thought, sure, you live in a world where you see dead people all the time. Like, maybe, I would have questioned, why is Dina throwing up specifically at this? Maybe. But, then again, these are horrific things that they're seeing. So I never really questioned why Dina was throwing up. And then when she's like, I'm pregnant, and then, Ellie and Dina, again, family-friendly kind of show, so they get close, right? Very intimate scenes. But Dina, when Dina says she's pregnant, I was like, what? What in the world? Am I the only one who just did not see that coming at all? I saw that she, and again, I know I missed this at the beginning, because later on she references, and I was like, oh, that's what she was doing. I know that she was picking up something in that abandoned store earlier on, and maybe it was very clear that they were pregnancy tests and I just missed it completely. I don't know how I did that, because maybe then I would have been like, oh, okay, well, that's obvious, because when she said it, I was like, what? And I don't know. I mean, this probably has some bearing because, it seems like Bella Ramsey or Ellie rather, is very protective of this child. She's like, it's our child, even though, it's Jesse's, apparently Jesse's child, but and Dina's child, but but Ellie and Dina are in a relationship now. So I don't know. I mean, maybe that's what the effect of it is on the story. But again, I'm a little confused. And that was the episode. They basically head on out and they're like, okay, time to get going, and that was it. So again, I mean, I'm not freaked out. I'm not saying the show is a failure now at this point or anything like that. I was just thinking about the fact that this episode, right, was supposed to really, I think, restart the momentum in my eyes of the show, because last episode, again, sit in your feelings, right? Sit in the grief and the horror of what just happened in episode 2. But now we got to get going, right? And I feel like now we have 3 episodes left, and 3 episodes is a long time in HBO terms because it's like 3 hours long. In Disney Plus terms, not that long, right? Disney Plus terms, it's like 30-minute episodes each. But I'm still a little concerned because I feel like the momentum was almost completely halted. And again, the action sequence was good, and the character development and the character work was good. It just felt like the show should have been, really heading towards the finale again, because we have 3 episodes left, I believe, 7 episodes in season 2. And I still don't quite know what we're heading towards, and we also haven't seen Abby for quite a while. So we'll see. I'm not giving up on the show or anything like that, but I'm just very curious to see how they're going to pick it up in the next episode. So guys, what did you think of season 2, episode 4 of The Last of Us? Did you enjoy it? And what do you think about the episode in comparison to the other episodes in the season? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys, for the second to last time, let's talk about Andor. Andor season 2, episodes 7 through 9. We are now 2 years before the Battle of Yavin, as we are fast approaching, or is it 1 year? 2 years, right? Because I have no idea. Honestly, I don't know. Anyways, we are approaching Rogue One, is what I was trying to say. And so this is going to be a full spoiler discussion for episodes 7 through 9. Again, the second to last chunk of Andor season 2. Next week, we'll be talking about the finale of it all. And then hopefully, I'll try to do a rewatch of Rogue One after seeing Andor season 1 a couple months ago, and then Andor season 2 just now. So hopefully we'll be able to get that done as well. But anyways, guys, let's dive in. This is a full spoiler discussion for Andor season 2, episodes 7 through 9. So if you haven't seen them, no worries. Make sure to save this segment to watch later, save the podcast, or skip ahead if you are listening to the entire podcast and come back once you have seen the episodes. Or if you don't care about the spoilers, then let's dive into it. So just for a quick recap on my thoughts thus far on Andor season 2, I really liked it. I think episodes 1 through 3 were kind of uneven, in my opinion, and it was a little odd because there were those signs of that absolute brilliance that you know and love from Andor, right? I did a rewatch of season 1, and I'll admit the first time I saw season 1, I don't know whether it was because it was episode by episode and they just didn't flow as well when they were singular episodes, or I don't know what it was. But the first time I saw Andor season 1 when it came out a couple years ago, I liked it, didn't love it. But I rewatched Andor season 1 recently. I did a segment about it on the YouTube channel. You can go check out my updated thoughts on Andor season 1, and I really liked it. I think it's fantastic, and the way that they were able to set up all the intrigue and whatnot. Andor feels like a show that will just get better every time you watch it, and so I'm looking forward to the day when I will eventually do a rewatch of Andor season 2 as well, because it's just been a lot to take in, honestly, every single time you watch an episode of Andor, and so I'm very much looking forward to doing a rewatch of this as well. But I thought the first 3 episodes were a little uneven. I think that they were good, setting up a lot of different things on that, the farm planet, and then I think that Andor getting stranded on the jungle planet Yavin, what ended up being Yavin, was a little unnecessary and honestly not my favorite part of that entire arc, but that's all well and good. And then we really did get to dive into the Gorman plot, which I didn't realize was going to be, because I thought it was going to be kind of like Aldhani, right? Where Aldhani obviously had, in season 1, had, big implications throughout the rest of the season, but it wasn't like it was pretty much self-contained to those 3 episodes. And I thought the Gorman part of the show was going to be similar, but it looks like the Gorman part of the show, obviously with episodes 7 through 9, the Gorman massacre has concluded, and it was crazy, and it was just visceral, and it was terrifying to watch. But that part of the show is concluded. But I didn't realize it was going to be basically the whole brunt of the show. Now, the last 3 episodes, I have no idea what it's going to be. We'll talk about K2SO and Bix and all that kind of stuff leading into the final 3 episodes. I have no idea where we're going with those. But the Gormans were basically the big plot point heading into this season. So I really liked the last 4 episodes, the last 3 episodes, episodes 4 through 6. Really thought it focused up the stuff about Luthen and Clea and Lonnie and at the art gallery with Krennic. That was really great. Stuff about Cyril and Deirdre, getting to sort of unearth this plot and the mini rebellion going on inside Gorman, and Andor sort of infiltrating that, and all that was really good. Oh, that was really good. So we head into episodes 7 through 9. And we'll talk about, again, I'm not going to go as in depth because there are 3 episodes to talk about here, but I just want to say that, again, there are things in here where I feel like it's going to benefit a lot from a rewatch just because there's so much going on. And it's a mini movie, right? Because you're watching 3 episodes that are basically an hour and a half to an hour 45 minutes in total, almost 2 hours basically in total. It's a lot to take in. And so I will say that, for parts of these episodes, I'm like, yeah, where are we going? Don't know where we're going. By the end of it, though, when it all comes together with Mon Mothma's speech, and at the end, it's amazing. It's brilliant. So really happy about that. Let's dive in to episode 7 here. Finally, we jump in, and it's I guess it is Battle of Yavin, BBY2, because that's what it says here. But we're finally at Yavin, so a lot happens between BBY3 and BBY2 because this is when the rebellion starts to really take shape, and we don't get to see it, but this is when Yavin 4 is really established on the base here. And there's some conflicts going on, right, between Will and Andor, and they're kind of talking it out, hashing it out, and Andor is realizing that, kind of thinking about the fact that they need an army now, and Luthen still wants Gorman, and there's a sort of tension going on between Will, who wants Dedra dead, and he's been, I guess he's been on Gorman for a while, because he has that, I don't know if it's his partner or whoever, that he's with at the end of this arc, but he's like, yeah, we need to take out Dedra. And I guess Gorman is back in play for Luthen. And meanwhile, Dedra is just setting a trap for everybody. And we see her kind of go through a transformation as well at the end. But we'll talk about that in episode 9. Cyril is also starting to have questions about Gorman as well. And he obviously, he's a very interesting and complicated character at the end of the day. And this is obviously the last, I would presume that we're going to see of Cyril. But, looking back at his character throughout the entire series, it's really interesting because he's a very... and again, I know it's a loaded word, but he's a very unstable character, and it's interesting because he has this sort of will they, won't they, not will they, won't they, but kind of a on and off thing with Dedra going on, and meanwhile he's having questions about Gorman because he wants to be an Imperial loyalist, but then it seems like he's having all of his beliefs questioned, but then he sees Cassian at the end, and so obviously a lot of these things are going out the window, and so it's just a complicated character. It really, really is, and I'm glad that we get to see complicated characters like this because it's not, they're not just black and white. That's what's great about this show is that the rebels do things that are morally really unpleasant, right? And meanwhile, the Empire is just oppressive and crushing. It's almost like that thing in Thunderbolts. If you guys have seen Thunderbolts, it's in the trailers. It's not a spoiler. Where Val says that there are good guys, or there are, you think there are good guys and bad guys, but you realize that there are bad guys and worse guys. And I'm not saying that about the rebels at all. I'm saying, obviously the rebels are fighting against the oppression of the Empire and whatnot. But the methods that the rebels are using, we even see this in Rogue One at the beginning with Cassian. I wonder if we're going to get to see what led to that event, right, where we meet Cassian in Rogue One, where he has to kill someone to get information out of him. And it's just kind of the desperation of these rebels that they're going through. And I think that that's a really interesting exploration of what's going on with the rebels thus far. So meanwhile, though, we have a little bit of a scene here with Andor and a Force healer. And it's interesting, right? Because this is what sets in motion the ending of this arc where Bix eventually leaves. But, he's freaked out by the Force healer. But Bix is like, I think she's right. I think that, you are a leader and you are going to be super important. It also kind of sets up the relationship between him and Chirrut and Baze in Rogue One. I think that that's interesting. I'm very interested to see, when I rewatch Rogue One, what that looks like. But really, what this is, it's about Bix, and it's about her understanding that he is crucial to the rebellion, and he needs to be there. Which is a really powerful thing. She's realizing that he's going to be one of the significant parts of this rebellion, whether or not he realizes it. Speaking of the rebellion, though, we get to see X-Wings, we get to see Rebel helmets. It's all coming together, and it's really interesting to see that. And that's how really the episode ends. They head to Andor and Will head to Gorman, kind of off the books, and they want to take out Dedra. Little do they know what's coming on, because in episode 8 we have the Gorman massacre. But yeah, this is Cassian, going rogue one last time, and we'll see where this goes. So episode 8, we head out here, and there's a lot of stuff about Gorman, right? There's a lot of agitation going on in Gorman, but Cyril, right? Cyril's trying to figure out what's going on. He heads into a room full of K2 units. So, I was wondering, because Alan Tudyk was in all of the press panels and things like that for Andor season 2, and I was like, how much of the show is K2 going to be in here? Because we're now over halfway through, and K2 is apparently just going to be really in the last 3 episodes, which is kind of a bummer, because I would have liked to have seen him a little bit more, but that's okay, totally fine. But once we see the K2 units in that little Imperial fortress, then we know that he's coming very soon. But he wants to know what's going on, and he goes up there to talk to Dedra, and he starts choking her again, of just an unstable character. And it was interesting, because I was kind of wondering, is he having a crisis of conscience here? I think at the end of the day, as we jumping forward a little bit, where he fights Cassian, I don't know if it's a full crisis of conscience per se. I think that he is starting to understand things and think about things in a more broad sense, as again you're confronted with the idea of the word that Mon Mothma uses is genocide, right? Massacring people. And when you're confronted with that, even Dedra has this moment later on where I even think she is confronted with the atrocity that she was witness to. And I think that, when you see that, right, it's like, oh, these Imperials who are so used to being so callous and everything, I think even they have a moment where they are reconciling with that, or they're trying to reconcile with that. Doesn't stop Cyril, obviously, from trying to kill Cassian at the end, because I think, Cassian represents everything wrong, everything that tried to ruin his life, right, earlier on in season 1. And I think that's never going to go away. And so I think that that's why he tries to still kill Cassian later on in the episode. So yeah, I mean, Cyril, he's a very, very complicated character, and he doesn't make it out of the episode. But really, what the brunt of this episode is the Gorman massacre, and it's just it's Star Wars, right? It is still Star Wars, but it's Star Wars at a level where it feels real. It feels like a real uprising against an oppressive regime, an oppressive government, and they're trying to stamp it out with the shields and trying to stamp out the protests, and the comment about fire at will into the crowds. It's chaos, it's death, it's destruction. The K2 units are terrifying. I know we learned to love K2SO, but they do such a great job of making you realize still that these are Imperial droids, because they are just the enforcer droids, and they're going after people, they're killing people. It's scary, it's terrifying, and Cyril is standing there in the middle of it, and Cassian and Will are in the middle of it, and yeah, the fight between Cyril and Cassian, it's brutal. Like, everything about this sequence is just brutal, and it's meant to, because the whole episode 9 is then built upon the fact that you've just witnessed as an audience member, but also Cassian has witnessed, and everyone in Coruscant has sort of been privy to the Gorman massacre. And it's meant to be impactful, right? It's just meant to be crazy, it's meant to be really heart-wrenching and impactful in that way. So we end the episode here. Will and Cassian say goodbye, although Will comes back later on in episode 9, and Cassian takes that dead droid K2, the KX unit, I guess they're calling him, the KX unit. And I think Cassian's seeing it now, right? He realizes that he is tired. He couldn't stop any of it from going on. He went there to try to stop Dedra, and he couldn't stop any of the massacre from going on. Even cold-hearted Dedra, has a crisis of not a crisis of conscience, I don't think, but just has a moment where she realizes what she was just witnessing there. So we had an episode 9, and we start out here with Bail Organa. So this whole episode is really oriented around the speech, and I like Benjamin Bratt. I like Benjamin Bratt in the role. I know that Jimmy Smits is the original. He was in Rogue One. He was in Obi-Wan. I like him. I like Jimmy Smits a lot, of course. But if you couldn't get Jimmy Smits, I think Benjamin Bratt is a good choice as well. And I think I like the fact that he knows he has to stay on Coruscant. He has to stay relatively inconspicuous, because I think he knows, right? He's hiding Leia. He's hiding one of the Skywalkers, and he knows that he can't make that big speech because of that. And Mon Mothma doesn't know that yet, but I think that it's a really clever way to kind of put that in here. So Cassian, right? Cassian is back on Coruscant, and he's telling Clea, he's like, look, I'm tired. And after everything he's seen, who can blame him? He's tired and he's seen so much death and destruction, and he's had to be a part of it. And he's like, I'm done. I can't do it anymore. Clea, kind of puts him in his place, right? She's like, no, listen, you gotta do this. You gotta extract Mon Mothma. This is for the rebellion. And we all know that Mon Mothma's speech is going to make waves, and the Empire is trying to bug her and to catch her. So this is a big deal. It's a huge deal. It's so big that Luthen, kind of comes and tries to confirm that she's going to go through with it and make sure that she finds Andor. And she's, even she has the nerve to stand up to Luthen and be like, look, I mean, you killed Tay, and I don't know if I can trust you, but everyone is kind of with the understanding that if Mon Mothma gets arrested and Bail's team has been compromised, then the whole rebellion, it all goes down. It all really hinges on getting Mon Mothma out of the Senate. And it's really great stakes. It's able to, I love how much tension they're able to build for a political speech. I think that, it sounds silly to kind of say that, right? You want your lightsabers and wars and Star Wars and whatnot. And that's great and all. But just building the tension of a speech, it's great writing. It's great television. I love that. And I was just cheering her on during the speech. She says, I wrote this quote down, the death of truth is the ultimate victor of evil. And I just think it's so true. And she's calling it what it is. It's unprovoked. It's unprovoked death and destruction. She calls Emperor Palpatine a monster on the Senate floor. She calls it a genocide. She's speaking truth to power. And I love it. It's one of the most powerful scenes I've seen in Star Wars in a long time. And then from there, you have a hard pivot, not really a hard pivot, but a pivot into, okay, now she's given the speech. Let's get her out of here. The end of the episode, it's just awesome. It's bringing everything together, right? What you've seen from the Gorman Massacre, for what you've seen from Bix, and understanding that Cassian is so important to this rebellion, and everything that's going on here. And he's, Cassian doing whatever it takes for the rebellion, killing people and just moving on, trying to get Mon Mothma out of here. And it's just bringing everything full circle. That's what I mean when I say that, there are certain parts of these episodes that are a little slower, right? A little bit, kind of what's going on here? Where are we going with this? But the ends of these arcs bring them all together, at least for the last couple, because the first one, it was okay. But the last, this one and the last one, really great. And so we head back to Yavin. I love how they're centering it still on Bix and Cassian. What I was not expecting, though, because I had the thought, right, when Cassian is telling Bix, I'm done, I'm leaving. We obviously know he's not done, because by the time Rogue One comes around, he's back in the rebellion. But what I was thinking about was, shoot, it's going to be hard because Bix is going to have to die, right? Bix is going to die. I'm presuming that Luthen and Bix and all those characters that we don't see, and Clea are not going to make it out of Andor Season 2. I could be wrong. What I was not expecting was for Bix to leave. And it was heartbreaking because I started tearing up when I saw this scene because of her talking to Cassian through the screen, because it's again, bringing everything full circle. She's like, no, I know, and you know how important you are to this rebellion. And I can't be the one holding you back here. I can't be the one to tell you, to help you leave because you're important to this. And you can leave is I think what she's saying, but I can't be the reason why. And it's powerful. And I have this vision. I think I know how the series is going to end, right? Because she says, and it's when a writer does this, you just kind of know this is how they're trying to pivot to end the series, where she goes, when we see each other again. And especially when you know the character's going to die. So she says, when it's over, we'll do whatever we want to. And you just know. You just know. I mean, he's not going to make it out, right? He's not going to make it out. And I'm just envisioning the epilogue to this whole series. I think I know what it's going to be. It's going to be Bix realizing, or the aftermath of Bix knowing and finding out, probably from Mon Mothma, that Cassian didn't make it out. And I think that it's going to be it's going to be a really bittersweet moment, because she realizes that Cassian didn't make it out, but he did. I would imagine this is probably going to be post Return of the Jedi or something like that, where she realizes that he did it. What he did single-handedly really propelled the rebellion forward. Not single-handedly. I just mean that, his actions, right, propelled the rebellion forward. And he was part of that group, the Rogue One squadron that did it. And I think that she's going to take solace in that fact, that she lost Cassian and they're never going to have that future together. But the rebellion and the entire galaxy won because of that. And I think that's, I would imagine, if I were writing this, that's where this is going to go. So keep an eye out for that in the last couple episodes. But of course, we have to end on the K2SO cliffhanger of it all. I'm very excited. I hope we get to spend all of the 3 episodes with K2SO and Andor, and basically just get another mini movie with K2SO, because that's the length of these 3 episodes, right? In each of the arcs, and so I'm very excited to see him in the next arc. But yeah, guys, this show, again, I think it would still benefit very much from a rewatch. I really do. But I also am just so impressed the way that they're able to make these little moments. Like in the last arc, when I talked about the fact that when Cleo is trying to get a listening device out of an artifact, so tense, incredibly tense. This episode, Mon Mothma's speech and just getting her out of the Senate it's incredibly high stakes. It's powerful, and I love it, and I'm just so excited to see where this series goes. And I'm excited to rewatch Rogue One as well. I'm very excited for that. So what did you guys think of episodes 7 through 9 of Andor Season 2? We're going to do one more of these, episodes 10 through 12, and then we will hopefully do a rewatch of Rogue One after that. Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys, we have a new DCU trailer, and no, it is not Superman. Although Superman, allegedly the new Superman trailer will be coming out in the next month or so there's that to look forward to. But no, it is not Superman. We have the new trailer for the next DCU project after Superman, and that is Peacemaker Season 2. Now, we've had discussions on this YouTube channel about the whole Season 2 bit and how James Gunn has been deciding to keep things and carry things over from the old DCEU and whatnot. You can go check out a segment previously, I believe, where I talk about James Gunn and his plan and his philosophy to what becomes canon, what doesn't become canon. Basically, everything that's referenced from Peacemaker Season 1 and the Suicide Squad are going to be canon now. I have my own thoughts on that. Really, even though I really liked Peacemaker Season 1, I thought it was a really fun time. I really liked the Suicide Squad. I wish that James Gunn had been a little bit more blanket statement with this kind of thing, because now it just looks like, oh, he's just picking and choosing stuff that he did because, of course, he likes what he did. Anyways, that's all an aside. We're here just to talk about the trailer for Peacemaker Season 2. The only reason I bring all that up is because, well, Peacemaker Season 2. So, there is that. But let's talk about this trailer. So first of all, and I hate to keep saying this because it's annoying, and I know it's annoying, everyone in the comments over the last 6 months who have been saying, no, the DCU is going to be disconnected and projects are going to stand alone. Some projects will absolutely stand alone. Just like how, because people have been comparing it to the MCU, just like how movies initially, like Guardians of the Galaxy, and yes, I know Thanos was there, but Thanos had never really shown up in the MCU before that. It wasn't like Thor Ragnarok with Thor and Hulk. So, films like Guardians of the Galaxy, even the first Ant-Man to a certain extent, I know Falcon was there, but the MCU has had standalone films, right? Eternals, pretty standalone. So I think that the idea that the DCU is going to be completely disconnected is once again disproved, because the very beginning of this Peacemaker Season 2 trailer sees Maxwell Lord, played by Sean Gunn playing his 20th DCEU, or DCU character, I should say, and then Guy Gardner, Nathan Fillion, our first real look at him in live action, and Isabella Merced, I think, as Hawkgirl, who we've been seeing in The Last of Us as Dina. To be honest with you, previously before this, because if I hadn't seen The Last of Us, the only thing I would have recognized her from, not even from watching the movie, was from the trailers for Dora the Explorer, or Dora in the Lost City of something. So, I mean, that's, I'm glad I saw The Last of Us, because I think she's a great fit now. Before I just had no idea what she was capable of outside of Dora the Explorer. So, anyways, we get to see these characters again. They're going to appear in Superman first, and then they're going to show up in Peacemaker Season 2, as well as Rick Flag Sr. So Peacemaker is going to be very, very connected to the fabric of the DCU. The scene is funny. It has that characteristic James Gunn humor, which I just think it works so much better in this context. Not to say that the Superman trailers haven't, necessarily worked for me. I was in the theater, I don't know if it was Minecraft or Thunderbolts or whatever, and I saw the Superman trailer again. And I saw the extended sneak peek during the Minecraft movie, and I just, that scene at the beginning with the Fortress of Solitude with the robots, it doesn't work for me, where the robot's like, oh my gosh, he looked at me. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. You know what does work, though, is the actual trailer where they're playing the John Williams orchestral score over it, and you get these flashes of seriousness and hope. And James Gunn is very capable of doing that. But the humor just doesn't work for me in the Superman trailer thus far. And in this trailer, it works so much better, because Peacemaker is ridiculous inherently, and he doesn't take himself seriously at all, and I think that that's a great thing. I love that about this trailer. I think the beginning joke is pretty funny, and I think that based on everything we see here. So he's facing up against some evil threat. Looks like Argus, looks like Rick Flag Sr. is going to be a big part of it. I like that. If we're going to bring in stuff from the Suicide Squad and from Peacemaker Season 1, I like that Rick Flag Sr. is going to be an antagonist, because the death of Rick Flag Jr. was a big part of, obviously, the Suicide Squad, but also Peacemaker Season 1 as well. And the fact that it was referenced, I think, in Creature Commandos. Yeah, a couple times in Creature Commandos as well. So I'd like that. The ending, the very ending, because honestly, aside from that, sure, is it fun to see Adebayo and Harcourt and Economos again? Yeah, for sure. But, really it's just action shots and things moving and happening pretty quickly. Not a whole lot to really dive deep into. And in my opinion, this is just a teaser trailer. The real big thing that I'm sure people are going to be talking about very intentionally from the marketing's perspective is that shot at the end, where another Peacemaker version of himself is showing up to fight him. And the question is, what is going on there? Few possibilities, obviously, whenever this happens in a trailer. Number one, with the superhero genre these days, multiverse? No, I don't think so. If James Gunn does multiverse, I would be baffled. Not because multiverse doesn't work inherently, but A, in Peacemaker, I don't think so. And B, James Gunn has said, I think recently, that he's kind of tired of multiverse, and I agree with him. I mean, I think we should be getting away from that. So no, I don't think it's another version of himself from the multiverse. Other possibilities, clone, maybe? That'd be kind of weird. But hey, I mean, Peacemaker Season 1 had a giant alien cow thing, whatever they called it. So, the cow, they call it the cow. So I don't know, maybe. I mean, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility that there was some cloning thing going on. B or C, it's a twin situation. I don't know if in the comics there's any precedent for Christopher Smith having a twin, but that is a possibility. D, it's some kind of illusion or hallucination or dream or whatnot. We know that his dad, played by Patrick, I'm blanking on his last name, but he's going to be showing up again. Robert Patrick, is that his name? Showing up again in probably hallucinations, because he showed up in the last scene of Peacemaker Season 1. So yeah, I mean, I think that would be a possibility, but it seems like from the ending scene, he's walking into a room specifically. So who knows, right? It's an interesting thing. And maybe this will just be one quick scene. Maybe it'll be like, Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, for those of us who remember that marketing campaign, where we got a big glimpse of Dark Rey, and it just turned out to be another dream sequence. So we'll see about that. But guys, I'm excited. I think it looks fun. It looks like it has the DNA of Peacemaker Season 1, which I really enjoyed, and I can't wait to see it. So what do you guys think of the first teaser trailer to Peacemaker Season 2? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, we have a bit of a bombshell to unpack here. And I say that not because this report really says anything that we didn't know before, but it fleshes it out in detail, in concrete detail, in a way that paints a really full picture of what's going on at Marvel Studios. So we're going to discuss this report from the Wall Street Journal about basically everything going on in the mind of Kevin Feige and the halls of Marvel over the past few years, as they've really struggled to regain that peak form of the MCU and hopefully heading in the right direction after Thunderbolts. And I say this is a bit of a bombshell because I've said this before. There's a whole hierarchy of sources, right? I'm sorry to say, if you take everything that every scooper says as truth, it's not going to work well for you, because they can get things wrong. There are certain scoopers, like for example, Jeff Snyder, I would take to be a little more trustworthy, a bit more trustworthy than the other ones who post on Twitter, because frankly, I've seen it. They get things wrong a lot. So there's that. But then you have your sources like The Hollywood Reporter, Variety, Deadline, The Wrap, that if they post something as an exclusive, generally speaking, it's 99% accurate to at least what they've been told. But then, once in a while, you get these really big publications, not just movie or entertainment industry publications, like New York Times, Wall Street Journal, that will post things about this. For example, the New York Times did an op-ed, or not an op-ed, but a report a couple months ago about what happened with Disney with Bob Chapek and Bob Iger, and it was fascinating. And when these publications put these things out, they've done their homework. They've really done their homework. So again, not to say that, we should take everything at face value and it's infallible, but to say that when the Wall Street Journal decides to post something about the MCU, it's important. And what's in this report, and if you want to go, because we're not going to go line by line through this report, even though sometimes we do read out some of these reports and go through a lot of the lines, we're not going to read this one line by line because it's just too long. There's so much to go through. But I would really encourage you, if you're interested in the MCU, if you're interested in hearing a discussion of what goes on within Marvel and what went on during, the highs and lows of Phase 4 and Phase 5, would highly recommend reading this. The article is called Disney Wanted More from Marvel, Now It Wants Less. It's from the Wall Street Journal, and it is fascinating. But we're just going to go through a couple of the main takeaways here, because it's pointing to this idea that Kevin Feige is really trying to focus up the direction of the future of the MCU, I think in a promising way, and hoping to redirect the ship, right the ship, and turn it back to a sustainable and quality model like it used to be. So I'm going to go through a couple of key points here. First of all, this is what we all knew. When Endgame was happening, right, there were a group of writers and a group of executives that said, how do we push Marvel forward in the future after Endgame? Because Endgame was such a massive success. And before Endgame, what this article points out is that, one of the big reasons of success actually were the reshoots for the MCU, is that they actually reshot 35 days worth of Thor the Dark World, which the article points out is almost, the length of a lot of shoots for low budget movies, 35 days. So, but I think Lou D'Esposito was quoted in this article as saying, well, if it doesn't work, we can just reshoot it. And that's a foolproof kind of way of doing it. And look, the 21 movies that came before Endgame were all above like 65% Rotten Tomatoes. Many of them were in the 90s, for Rotten Tomatoes, and they were averaging $1 billion. So the MCU, it was foolproof to a certain degree. But then, right, around the time that Endgame was coming out, the article points out that Disney Plus was also coming out, and Kevin Feige, this is in the words of the article, I think, said, wanted to be a good corporate citizen and wanted to say, okay, we want to explore these avenues of storytelling. We're going to push out as much content for Disney Plus and the MCU as we can. And it seems like from the framing of this article, it really was because Feige was like, okay, I want to really be in line with the company, and I want to expand and tell stories, and let's do this, right? Let's do this. But then we saw what happened, right? The first few series, WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and Loki were pretty successful. But then you started to see slippages. And, I'm going to read this one quote. This is directing somebody, I think, at Marvel, somebody who worked at Marvel at the time. This is their quote. It says, quote, "The strategy just became expansion, right? So they wanted to just continue to grow and grow and grow and grow, and continue to really make more products. And what the article says is that it really, and we knew this, right? You're able to tell based on the product of the screen and just based on what we know about the Hollywood industry. But this article confirms it really stretched Kevin Feige thin. So much so that he then had to break out all the different projects and had a bunch of executives. They were called Parliament, which is just kind of funny corporate kind of a way to frame that. But Kevin Feige basically put a couple executives on each project, each movie, each show, so that they were running it. But because of that, so he then became the final decision maker, but he was still so stretched thin that, people, what the article says, and this is so interesting, is that people would have to, they would work on something for so long, for weeks, and then try to get it approved by Feige, and all of their work would become irrelevant because he just wasn't able to see the process. And once he saw it, he was like, no, this isn't working. And it got so bad that even some staffers had to chase him down in the hallways of Marvel to get feedback for things. That's how bad it got. So then we go through all the fiascos. I'm just kind of giving a summary here of what happened with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and the fact that, oh no, that things weren't working. Secret Invasion. I think 2023 was probably the lowest that Marvel has ever been in quite some time. I think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was more of a James Gunn thing, and Loki Season 2 was good, but that was the year of Secret Invasion. That was the year of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and that was the year of the Marvels. And it got so bad that Marvel. Once Kevin Feige realized that Quantumania was not a success, they really tried to fix the Marvels, it seems like, and then they tried to really add a narration and voiceover to catch people up on the Disney Plus shows, because the Marvels, right, is starring two characters who were introduced in Disney Plus shows, Miss Marvel and Monica Rambeau. And that ended up, it didn't work out that well, because the Marvels is the lowest grossing MCU movie by a long shot, $206 million worldwide. It barely made $200 million, and it cost $300 million. So it was really bad. That was also the time we've heard reports about this, when Marvel decided to change direction, and they went to their retreat, their executive retreat, and they said, okay, we're gonna fix this, and we're gonna bring in Dr. Doom. Apparently Robert Downey Jr. and Kevin Feige had been talking for about a year at that point. And so they decided, we're going to flip direction here. We're going to move to Doom, and we're going to move forward. And this article does confirm, by the way, that Thunderbolts was really the first big step into this quote unquote reset. Because, and this is what's important, because so far what we've been doing, honestly, a lot of these things, it's just interesting to get the bigger picture of what's going on here. But these aren't things that we didn't know before. These are things that we did know before, or at least we're able to speculate on. But now we get to something interesting here. So the future plan here is that Kevin Feige is like, I'm going to, first of all, keep the TV universe separate. And the reason is because, and I don't think that's to say that TV characters are never going to appear in the movies and vice versa, but just for the most part, keep the TVs. I think the word they use is divorced from what's going on in the main MCU. That's why, for example, you don't see Daredevil running around in Thunderbolts. I hope that's not a big spoiler. Hopefully you guys, if you haven't seen the movie yet, that's not a huge spoiler. But, that's why these two things are going to be separated, right? The Daredevils of the world, the New York City of Daredevil and New York City of Thunderbolts, even though that, they're in the same New York City, right, in the MCU. And so Kevin Feige, and the reason is because the article points out that Kevin Feige has increasingly been telling people that he is, he's seeing from audiences that they're viewing the MCU now as homework. And that's been my concern, right? Even though I would be very excited to see Daredevil show up in Avengers Doomsday, people aren't going to know who he is, right? Like, not just the fact that he's a TV character, but there are so many of these TV characters now that if Moon Knight and Miss Marvel and She-Hulk and Kate Bishop and all these other characters and Ironheart and all these characters who showed up in TV shows first began to show up in the movies, it would just be so overwhelming. And Kevin Feige has realized that the movies have started and the TV shows have started to feel like homework. So part of the plan for the future is going to be to really just separate the TV universe, and he's going to take charge of the movies, and he's going to have other executives running the TV universe, and that it's not, he's going to try to really focus on not making the projects feel like they're required viewing for future MCU projects. It used to be that way. Like, I would argue that in the MCU, you could pick out almost every single standalone movie. Because again, I mean, in any universe, right? If you wanted to watch Sonic 2, for example, I mean, sure, you could watch it as a standalone movie, but you would want to watch Sonic 1, right? So I'm not, I think aside from the fact that, like, sure, if you wanted to watch Captain America, the Winter Soldier, watching Captain America, the First Avenger would be pretty good idea, right? But divorced from the rest of the MCU, even though it has Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. and Bucky, but, things like that, right? That's what Kevin Feige really wants to get to. So Kevin Feige's focus now is going to be on Thunderbolts, now Fantastic Four, and Doomsday and Secret Wars, really making sure that those two films are a success. And I think that that's a good thing. That's a really good thing, because now Kevin Feige's attention can be really squarely put on those films, making sure that they work. I hope they do. Thunderbolts was great. I loved it. Fantastic Four looks really good. And we'll see about Doomsday, and we'll see about Secret Wars. But the last little nugget here that I wanted to talk about is that he apparently, as they shift focus into the future, this is going to be the plan. So we're going to have TV shows separate from the movies. They're going to be run by actual showrunners. That was something discussed in a previous report. On top of that, he has a plan for the X-Men. The X-Men are coming in the MCU. And this report says that he has a 10-year plan for the X-Men. So for those of you who are saying Kevin Feige is going to leave Marvel after this and whatnot, I still think he has one hurdle left to climb, and that's the X-Men. And I think that, yes, like the article says, we can kind of push aside the last couple of years as a quote unquote bad dream. I would argue it's really just 2023. Honestly, 2022 was okay in terms of MCU. 2021 I think was great, honestly, for the MCU. But I digress. But really just taking the last few projects here and just being like, it's just been a bad dream, and moving forward. But with the plan of now moving into the X-Men universe and whatnot, we talked about the Deadpool X-Men team up movie. I think that this is a really good plan. So honestly, I take all of this. It's fascinating. I wish it didn't happen. I wish every single project that came out after Endgame was great. That's not the case. That's not what happened. But I think that what we see here is Kevin Feige knows he needs to course correct. He's going to course correct. And I think that the future of the MCU is honestly bright. I think Thunderbolts is an indication of that. And I think that the fact that they're focusing up and really making sure that everything is quality going forward is a really good thing for the MCU. So I am really excited about that. I take this to be an encouraging thing, not a doom and gloom kind of thing, which is ironically one of the subheadings of the article as they talk about Doctor Doom. So I think this is a good thing. Guys, let me know, have you read the article? Because I would highly recommend that you do. And if you have, let me know what you think about it in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys, we have some awesome news to talk about, at least hope for, because it's news, but it's still not confirmed that we have a director for this film. But still, anytime we get to talk about the upcoming MCU X-Men film, which I am increasingly getting more and more excited about, especially as the multiverse saga comes to a close, any chance we get to do that, I am so thrilled to do so. So we have some news here about the upcoming MCU X-Men film, like I said, and apparently we have a director in talks to take over the film, and I think it's a great choice. According to Deadline, one of the more reputable sources in Hollywood, Jake Schreier, and you may not recognize the name immediately, though if you've been on the channel for the last, I don't know, a couple of weeks, you definitely recognize the name, because he is the director of the recently critically acclaimed, and hopefully will do well in the box office, critically acclaimed Thunderbolts, asterisk. And I'm not going to reveal what the asterisk means. It's all over social media right now. If you haven't seen it yet, though, I'm not going to say it here. But Thunderbolts. The Thunderbolts director, Jake Schreier, is in talks to direct the MCU X-Men film. We're going to read the entire article, because it's, the entire first couple paragraphs of the article. And because it's not that long, and then the article kind of goes into its own speculation and whatnot. But I think it's great news. So let's take a look at what Deadline has to say. Quote, following the successful launch of Thunderbolts, director Jake Schreier might already have his sights set on the next big Marvel Studios project. As sources tell Deadline, he is in early talks to direct the studio's new X-Men movie. It is unknown where things stand in the deal-making process, but insiders say that following a meeting this past week, Schreier looks to be the top choice to take on one of the studio's most anticipated projects. Michael Leslie penned the script, with Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige producing. Marvel Studios has no comment. And again, the rest of it is mostly speculation and talking about why this is such a big deal and whatnot. It is a big deal. It is a very big deal. But let me just expound upon why this is such a good thing. First of all, talent is talent. And while Jake Schreier has not directed a whole lot in terms of movies, he's directed a lot of television. And what he has directed in Thunderbolts was really good. It was critically acclaimed, and it's not going to make the most money in the box office. I guarantee that. I predicted it was going to make a ton of money. I kind of overinflated the MCU in my box office predictions for 2025. That's fine. I had some confidence that the MCU was going to really take a positive turn. I think Captain America Brave New World might have stunted it a little bit, but I have confidence that Thunderbolts will have legs. Most importantly, though, Marvel is obviously impressed with the quality of Thunderbolts, that they are interested in getting Jake Schreier back. And that is always a good thing, right? That is always a good thing. And the second thing, in relation to that, is that the sensibilities of Jake Schreier as a director makes me really excited. Because if you look at what makes Thunderbolts successful, right? I mean, there are a lot of things. But number one is the characters, right? And number two is it's not just the characters. It's not just the action. Although the action, well, not spectacular. And again, I think that has a lot to do with, of course, the director, but also cinematography, stunt coordinators, and things like that. So it's not just the director that makes the action look great. But anyways, it's not just the characters, it's the characters' emotional journeys in this movie. And it's an ensemble, right? It's an ensemble of characters, misfit characters that have to come together for a common cause. That, to me, sounds like a lot of the tenets for a very successful X-Men movie. A group of misfit characters that feel like they don't belong together, and they're taken on an emotional, deeper journey to discover themselves and to really find who they are. That's the X-Men. I mean, again, it's a very generic way of describing it, but that is the X-Men. That's what makes the X-Men so good. It's not just the adamantium claws. It's not just the telekinesis. It's not just the Phoenix Force, right? It's the fact that these characters symbolize something of a marginalized community. They symbolize a group of people that have been oppressed by society who are looking to do good for them. And on the other side, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants are looking to really fight back and seek retribution. It's such a great construct for storytelling within the superhero genre. And Jake Schreier being the one to again, not confirmed, but in early talks to direct it, what stands out to me is that this is what Marvel does so well. They keep their talent. They know what talent is available, and they keep them around. For example, the most recent example is Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. That movie also came out right at the end of the height of the pandemic, and it didn't make a whole lot of money, sure, but it was beloved by critics. I think that fans really liked it. People have been asking, I've been asking where Shang-Chi has been, and we're not, the fact that we're not going to get to see him in live action since Shang-Chi 1 until Doomsday is a travesty to me. But the fact that they said, okay, well, John Watts is not going to be able to direct Spider-Man 4, Spider-Man Brand New Day for whatever reason. Let's get Destin Daniel Cretton to direct Spider-Man Brand New Day. That's amazing. And he was originally going to direct Avengers 5, actually, Avengers the Kang Dynasty, ironically enough. Earlier, right, they said, okay, Russos, you did a great job with Winter Soldier. You did a great job with Civil War. Those two films have a lot of tenets of what make the Avengers films so successful. The ensemble, especially for Civil War, the character development, the action. Let's give you Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. That's what Kevin Feige is so good at. He's recognizing talent. He knows that John Watts did such a good job with Spider-Man 1 and 2 or Spider-Man Homecoming, that he's like, okay, Spider-Man Far From Home, Spider-Man No Way Home, because he doesn't always keep the directors on, right, for the entire trilogy. So they recognize talent, they keep them in-house. I think that the directors of Moon Knight, even though Moon Knight wasn't, the most acclaimed film or acclaimed series in the MCU, they kept those directors. I forget their names off the top of my head, and they did a bunch of episodes of Daredevil, and I think they did a great job with Daredevil Born Again, right? So it's really encouraging to me that Kevin Feige is recognizing, okay, we have a huge, bench of talent. Let's keep them around. Let's have them, join the bench of formerly James Gunn, Ryan Coogler, Destin Daniel Cretton, Jon Favreau, the Russo brothers who are back for Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars. I think that that's such a great thing. So if this does end up coming to pass, I'm super excited. And now, really, the only thing left is once this is confirmed, if it's confirmed, is the casting. I think then we really get into casting. If you thought the frenzy for Fantastic Four was a big deal, just you wait for the next Wolverine, the next Professor X, the next Magneto. I think it's going to be really, really exciting. Guys, what do you think about the Thunderbolts director, Jake Schreier, potentially being the director for the MCU X-Men film? Let me know in the comments down below. And guys, that will do it. Episode number 77 of the Access Blockbusters pod. Thank you so much for joining us. We are heading full steam into full steam ahead into the summer months of movies and television. I am so excited. By the way, guys, have you been watching The Studio on Apple TV? Really good show. We might talk about this in a couple weeks when it's over, but really, really good show. Really fun show. Anyways, guys, that will do it from the Access Blockbusters pod. Make sure to subscribe for future content, future reviews and reactions and things of that nature. And if you want to check out the audio-only platforms, links are always in the description down below. That will do it from me from the Access Blockbusters pod, episode number 77, and I will see you guys in the next one.